The Rebel Capitalist Show.
If we could unpack Self-Made Man, this was a podcast, which was absolutely fantastic. I remember
Thank you.
I used to listen to it all the time when I was in Medellin, Colombia. I remember going to the gym there at the Charlie, and I'd always listen to that podcast, and then a couple other digital marketing podcasts. And but then you kind of put that on pause for a moment to really pursue this hydroponics business, where you're trying to grow basically every vegetable that you would need in a healthy way, that you could do it actually in your house. I mean, it was a fantastic idea. And then, but let's go over that, because you had so many successes, but then that was something that wasn't maybe as successful. And I'm sure you learned a lot of lessons from that.
Yeah, at that point, that was around 2015, and I'd built two multiple eight-figure, 2 or 3, information businesses, right? So I had, over the course of 10 years, I felt really done all that I could do in that industry. And I always wanted to continue to push myself as an entrepreneur. I've never been one to find the big red easy button and then just continue on that path. I get bored way too easily. And I read one of Peter Diamandis's first books on decentralization, and it was very inspiring to me. And I wanted to do something in the physical product market that wasn't built around my brand or my name. And I lived right across the street from the Whole Foods headquarters in downtown Austin. And so I would shop there every single day, and I did a lot of juicing. And if you've ever juiced organic produce, to make, a bottle of juice, it's like $40 or $50 in organic produce. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
And so I'm a part of Peter's mastermind group and focused on decentralization. And I'm like, why hasn't anyone decentralized the ag industry? Because that's the answer. We've decentralized the workforce. We've decentralized real estate and hotels and taxis and all of these other industries. Why haven't we done that with food? And again, the idea that you have to be wealthy to eat food that is not covered in poison, it was like a pretty disturbing idea or concept to me. It didn't sit well with me at all. And so how do you fix that problem? Well, it's to decentralize the industry. You've got to turn the existing model upside down, because when you are growing produce in California or even on the other side of the world in mass, using fertilizer and destroying the ground in the process, and then you're having to put it through a harvesting process, and then a cleaning process, and a distribution process, and a packaging process, and then finally truck it across the country into a Whole Foods. Well, of course, something that should cost 10 cents costs $1. And if we can get rid of that entire infrastructure and just start everything and finish it in your living room or in your house, well, then it gets rid of all that. It gets rid of the water waste. It gets rid of 100% of the pesticide use. It restores the land. And most of all, it reduces people's food costs by about 90%. So we set out to design the world's first automated robot for food production. And I knew that the key to success to this was that it was going to have to be easy. There's plenty of systems that we tested and bought that you can put in your house or in your backyard right now, but requires a lot of attention. You have to constantly balance the pH. You have to constantly, change out the water and the nutrients. And the lighting, if it's indoors, it fills your house up with blue light all day, which is not very fun, or red spectrum light, depending upon what you're growing. And it was just not a good design. And so the concept was, what if we could automate this entire process to where all you have to do is drop a little seed pod in it, and then it balances the pH, it balances the nutrients, it has Wi-Fi that's connected to the basically the sun cycle. So the lights come on in the morning as the sunrise naturally comes on, and then they go off in the evening as the sunset naturally goes down, right? And that it actually becomes a biohacking device for you as a human, as far as your circadian rhythms are concerned and things like that. And so I spent about 3 years designing and building the prototype, and we did that. I did that with a company called Whipsaw in Silicon Valley, and we had a system up and running in my living room, which was awesome. We were growing produce, and it was quite amazing. But there's a reason why nobody has done this. There's a reason why you can't buy this at a store today, and that's because it is infinitely more challenging than you would ever expect. You have to take into consideration that every single water source is different. The mineral content, the hardness of every water source in every town is different, right? You have to take into account, which is something that I didn't know when I started this process, that plants give off metabolic waste just like people do. And if you have a circulating closed system, as the plants give their waste out, it's being uptaked by the other plant, and it's basically they're peeing in their pool, if you will.
Right.
And some plants want certain nutrients and other plants want other nutrients, and they're fighting over them. And some want a certain light spectrum and others want a different light spectrum. It just becomes a very difficult process. But about 3 years in, we realized that this is going to take another 3 to 4 years to get to production, and another probably $5 to $10 million. But something made the decision for me. And that is, one day I came home after a trip, and, these systems naturally, the plants suck the water out of the reservoir and the water evaporates. I came home to clean out the tank and refill it, and it was full of black stuff. And I didn't know what it was, didn't really think much about it. I just know I started sneezing a lot, as I was cleaning it out. But about 6 months later, over the next 6 months, my health started to really deteriorate. My sleep got worse and worse. Inflammation got worse and worse. My tolerance for stress deteriorated significantly.
Was it mold?
Until one day, what's that?
Was it mold, like black mold?
Yeah, it ended up being toxic mold. And one day I was sitting on my couch and I felt a little click in the back of my head. I was like, it's kind of weird. Doesn't feel good. And then that was a moment where I basically physically couldn't fall asleep for over a year. Almost died, and went from racing cars one weekend to non-functional, and either going from my bed to a couch 23 out of 24 hours a day for about a year.
Right.
And nobody knew what it was. And the business came to a halt. Social life came to a halt. And it was really just about survival at that point. And it took about 6 different doctors in a year before I found a doctor who finally tested me for mold and figured out that that's what it was. And if you ever take a mycotoxin test, that's how you test for mold in your system. The scale goes from 0 to 50. Anything above 5 is toxic. And my result was 21,000. Yeah. So basically my brain was being eaten alive by mold, which is not a good thing. And so that started a 3-year-long healing process now, but it also turned into the biggest gift that I've ever gotten because of what I've learned by going through that healing process. It completely changed my life in phenomenal ways. So
Mike, before we get into that, I'm personally curious to know, how do you eat well today? Knowing what you know, I mean, you obviously took a massive deep dive into that. How do you get your chicken? How do you get your beef today? How do you get your produce, your vegetables, your fruits?
The main thing was to get on an anti-inflammatory diet. And so when you have a really bad toxic load in your body, whether it's from mold or it could be from heavy metals or aspartame or something else, the first thing that happens is it takes your gut biome and completely throws it out of balance. And then that causes a whole cascade of other problems like leaky gut, leaky brain. And then as soon as you get those and you're getting these, like gluten and dairy and other foods that would normally not be an issue for you, they start to penetrate your intestines and they start to go directly into your bloodstream. And then that causes autoimmune issues and systemic inflation, chronic inflammatory response syndrome. And that's where people start to get all of these crazy undiagnosed autoimmune disorders. But that's really what's at the root of the cause of those. And so the beginning process to healing from that is to basically go on an autoimmune diet. And so no sugar, no gluten, no dairy. For me, it's been clean protein and, organic protein and organic vegetables for the most part, and rice. No alcohol, no sugar of any kind or carbs. Outside of autoimmune compliant ones like rice, and that was a huge lifestyle change for me, because I'd growing up in Texas, it's Tex-Mex, queso, and margaritas, and all of those types of foods that I'd loved and lived on, and all of those went away, and they went away in a forced way, not a really a voluntary way, but that was a huge game changer for me. And
do you now feel comfortable buying your produce and your meats and whatnot from Whole Foods, or do you take it a step further and try to find like local farms way out in the middle of nowhere where they're just like doing grass-fed beef, and you can buy directly from the farmer, or maybe free-range chickens and you buy directly from the farmer, so you're cutting out that middleman as much as possible, like you were doing with your hydroponics business?
Yeah, a good. Actually, one of the people we interviewed on the podcast years ago was the founder of ButcherBox, and so his wife went through the same process. Very significant autoimmune health issues, and had to go to completely clean protein sources. And he set up a business to do that, going from farm to farm, identifying the individual cows and sources, and then basically setting up ButcherBox to sell those animals to you and I. And so that's a great kind of easy, big red easy button if you want the cleanest protein in the world. I buy grass-fed from Whole Foods, but I've kept it to that. I haven't gone to that much of an extreme, but I do choose that option every time that it's available to me. So
yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
And I wrote that down because I'm actually going to look into that for myself.
Oh, cool.
I was thinking about this the other day. So it's a perfect conversation.